The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode 141.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Next Generation episode, Evolution. Joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, remember to subscribe to The Secrets of Star Trek in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or at the SQPN YouTube channel, where you should also make sure to hit the bell to get notifications. So we are talking about the third season premiere for Next Generation. We've jumped ahead a little bit. We've decided to kind of jump back and forth between first season and third season when we talk about TNG and a couple of the other series like that, because frankly, the first couple seasons of several of these series are not so good. We want to have some more.
They're pretty painful.
Yeah, more decent episodes.
This episode is focused, of course, on Wesley.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's called Evolution. And like Evolution, it's kind of slow.
Yes, It is kind of slow. This one was written by Michael Piller, who eventually ends up becoming a key producer and in charge of writing room on several of the series. I think Voyager, right? Or DS9. I forget which one it is.
Voyager, not DS9.
He worked on DS9, but he wasn't in charge.
He wasn't running things. That's right. And directed by Winrick Colby, who did a lot of Star Trek episodes in various series. So interesting there. So this season premiere marked several big changes to the show as they started. Not as big, but Geordi was promoted to lieutenant commander from lieutenant, and Worf was promoted to lieutenant from lieutenant junior grade. Not as big a deal. Beverly Crusher returns to replace Dr. Pulaski, which was big. Yeah. And forms an essential part of the plot of this episode, but we'll get to that. They also have the new uniforms that replace the pajamas from the first couple seasons, which the crew, the cast, were very happy with, because apparently the old uniforms, for some reason, they actually caused like back pain or something.
Yeah.
They were basically like a spandex material, but they were very tight and very, would kind of stretch, and so they'd be fighting against that, I suppose. Yeah,
you'd be under constant stress to stand up straight. But apparently they cost $3,000 each uniform, and so they didn't get them to the entire crew for a while.
I'm sure somebody's uncle could have gotten them wholesale.
Yeah. and by the way, this is when we start getting the Picard maneuver. The stand up and pull down the tunic maneuver.
Right, that's right.
With these new uniforms.
We also get new opening credits and the third and final version of the theme music. So this kind of was a retool of the show at this point. And really, from this point, the show really gets its stride. I mean, this first episode is not the best, but it starts to really get better.
It starts to get better, but that's a process. I mean, my first note is still haven't hit their stride as writers.
Right.
And to my mind, it's really not until the end of the third season that happens.
Okay. There's some good, my recollection is there's some good episodes.
Yeah, here and there are good ones, but I don't think we get consistent delivery of decent episodes until the end of the third season.
Okay. I could buy that.
And also kind of, to know where this is in time, this is the last whole season that Gene Roddenberry is alive for, at least for the airing.
Right.
Because he died in 1991, and this aired in 1990.
That's right. Wow. Yeah. Well, no, this was, yes, the end of the season is 1990. This episode is September of 89. That's when it premiered. But you're right. It's the 89-90 season. That's right.
So this episode is pretty unsubtle. It involves a couple of, I mean, the sort of the ostensible plot is twofold. There's this guy on the ship who, Dr. Paul Stubbs, who's here to study a super, or not a supernova, but a neutron star that's about to fling off some matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why they're here at this pair of binary stars. The other main plot is something starts going wrong with their computer core. And at first they don't know what it is, but it starts behaving badly. Those, though, are just external reasons to focus on particular characters. The character plots are Wesley realizes he's responsible for the problems with the computer core. And we have this contrast going on between Dr. Paul Stubbs, who's presented as like a 57-year-old Wesley. He's like Wesley 40 years in the future. And that means our central question is, how is Wesley going to grow up? And because Dr. Beverly is back, she's all concerned about, is Wesley's progression as a young man going as it should, or is he like being too bookish and taking on too much responsibility? Shouldn't he be having fun and getting into trouble and stuff like that?
Right.
As this episode illustrates, though, he's got the trouble aspect really down. So she needn't worry about that.
Well, and, I mean, of course, this is where they retcon why Beverly was gone for season 2. It wasn't because of contract problems or issues with the character. It was because she was at Starfleet Medical for a year.
Right.
But left Wesley behind to do that, which, I mean, those are in the military. That's not out of the ordinary. That does happen.
And they had told us that when she left and they introduced Dr. Pulaski.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, then Dr. Stubbs, if he looks familiar, if you're familiar with the TV sitcom Scrubs, he was like the lead doctor on that.
Oh, Stubbs was on Scrubs. Interesting.
Yeah, Stubbs was on Scrubs.
Was he better there than he was here? Because I wasn't particularly happy with him in this episode.
I wasn't the biggest fan of Scrubs, but he was kind of the crotchety, arrogant, mean doctor on it. I guess.
He does that here. Sure. Okay.
Star Trek has this history of the going back to the well of the overconfident, arrogant scientist who shows up and is put in his place by the crew of the Enterprise or whatever ship he happens to be on. Usually Enterprise. I mean, we just saw this not long ago with Kaminsky and the Traveler. So it's just,
or all the way back to let's imprint our engrams on this new computer that'll run your ship for you, Captain Dunsel.
Right,
exactly.
Right. Or the one with the guy with the robots underground we just talked about on the original
Dr.
series.
Roger Corby.
Roger Corby. Right. I mean, it's just, this is a standard lesson for Star Trek is, beware of the limits of science and arrogant scientists. And so,
especially when they're, the young prodigy like Daystrom was, like Stubbs is, and that they've peaked early in their scientific expertise, and now they're trying to recreate their career with their experience.
Right.
Stubbs also, there's just so much irritation on the level of dialogue in this episode, like how Stubbs keeps referring to Wesley as my young friend.
Yeah.
It's like, who talks like that repeatedly?
All I could think of was the Emperor from Star Wars, my young apprentice.
Yes. Yeah, it's very condescending and arrogant, and like just it's very writers write like that, but people don't talk like that.
Yeah. Also, in terms of writing, so the core, now in Star Trek, there, like in other fiction, there are only a certain number of basic plots. But the basic plot that they have here is something is going wrong with the ship and we don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And that's handled at least 2 other times in Next Generation.
Oh, yeah.
And better both times. It's handled, I don't know, a season or 2 later in the first Barclay episode, Hollow Pursuits, where instead of finding a systematic solution, it's like, wait, maybe we're just tracking something over the ship that's messing it up, which is a much more creative solution. And it's in the 7th series. Now, what they do here is it's going to be nanites that are evolving, so an emergent form of technological life. But even that is done better in the 7th season with the episode Emergence, where the Enterprise's technological systems somehow give rise to a new electronic form of life that, like this one, basically flies off at the end of the episode. But it's much more creatively done. You have that whole holodeck sequence with the train and getting to Vertiform City and all that kind of stuff. And so this is just really actually kind of boring by comparison.
And then there was the sentient robots that showed up back again in Lower Decks, if you remember those ones. That were
the
also,
exocomps?
The exocomps, yes. Yeah. It is not as satisfying here. I was, as I'm watching it and I was thinking about it later, I'm trying to figure out what is it about this problem and their tracking of it and the solution that just is unsatisfying to me. And I don't know if I can put my finger on it, but Wesley screws up badly and pays no price for it, essentially. There's no discernible penalty for him.
You create a new civilization as a result of screwing up, you kind of get a pass, I guess.
I guess he's their god creator or something. He's in their mythology. Well, in any case.
And it's all because of Wesley's poor lab practices. So as the episode begins, he's asleep in a med lab.
Right.
And he's been eating in the lab. He's got a partially consumed omelet right there on the table in front of him.
Yes.
Note, do not eat in scientific laboratories.
Right.
This is completely against protocol. You can contaminate your stuff, and your stuff can contaminate you. So eating, clearly has very lax laboratory discipline right there. And so it's no surprise that the nanites he's been experimenting with have escaped and started reproducing.
Right. And he doesn't report it to anyone. He's an immature prodigy child. He's not. I kind of blame Riker and Picard because they're obviously not giving him enough supervision and enough oversight.
Well, even Riker, when Wesley shows up on the bridge late, he just kind of does the
finger wag,
finger wag at him and laughs. He thinks it's funny.
Right.
Well, being late to your shift is bad, but I could excuse it for a 17-year-old, but eating in a lab, wow.
Yes, that is very bad. So the experiment that Stubbs is doing is, like you said, he's studying neutronium decay during a stellar explosion from a neutron star, and the star explodes every 196 years like clockwork, and he even calls it Old Faithful in space. And this is the only...
You do know how neutron stars work, okay? This is not unusual.
Right.
There are a lot... he compares it to Old Faithful so that the audience will have a frame of reference, but, guy, this is every pulsar.
Yes.
There are lots of things in space that work like clockwork.
And so this is apparently the only star they know of that has the right conditions that he needs for his experiment. And so this is essentially a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him to do this thing, which is apparently going to be better than his prodigy thing that he did when he was a kid. We don't get a whole lot more detail on that, but he's clearly some sort of celebrity scientist. Right. He had an unauthorized biography.
So of course we've got the ticking clock that Data can tell you down to the 10th of a second, and we've got to make sure this gets done in time, which, spoilers, it does.
Right, of course. There's a whole bunch of odd malfunctions. We don't have to get into the details of every single one of them. But there is an experiment package that they want to launch. That's the doctor's thing called the Egg, and this is the MacGuffin, I suppose, of some in one way of this episode.
Yeah. And the Egg looks like a big exocomp, although it's really apparently a virus quarantine thing from the episode The Child.
Right.
Speaking of malfunctions, though, I did like, they had to turn off the power to the entire bridge to stop the radio from playing John Philip Sousa.
Yes. Yeah. There was a couple of them were, a little odd. So we do have this conversation between Crusher and Picard about it being awkward for Wesley that his mother is on board and he's a junior officer. So I could see that. That could be awkward. Like, your mom. At least he's not living with her now. There is that. He's got his own quarters. So
I kept thinking of the song by Violet Sedan Chair, Hovercraft Mother.
Well, we definitely get that at the end, but we'll get to that.
Oh, yes.
Picard has a line that he says to Crusher, when they're talking in the ready room. I know how difficult it was for you being away, and he gives her a look, and I'm like, is that sort of a subtle thing meant for Gates McFadden? I know it was tough for you being away for
wink,
a year
wink.
of contract.
Yeah.
And so they have this conversation about Wesley not getting into enough trouble for a 17-year-old, which I think is a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
But also, and then Stubbs has his talk with Wesley about peaking, and you'll never face a greater adversary than your own potential, my young friend. Then Stubbs is getting really antsy as the things are going wrong, and he thinks Picard's playing it's too safe with these nanites infesting the computer.
Yeah, when Stubbs is clearly insane because he flat out says, and Troy says he's telling the truth, I would rather die than leave.
Yes.
Because if they don't, with all the malfunctions, if they don't get the egg launched and away in time, they will die when the big fireworks happen.
Right.
And it's like, I like Picard's response, which is very understated.
Yeah.
I don't believe you speak for the majority of the crew.
I like that line.
Which is a good line, but the whole I'd rather die than leave, it's like you're clearly irrational.
Yes.
If that's how you feel. I do like, even though he's really slimily arrogant the way he does it, I like the pushback he gives Deanna Troi.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's starting to do her emotional reading voodoo on him, and it's like, will you please get out of my head?
Turn off your beam into my soul.
Yeah, I will speak for myself and disclose how much of what I'm feeling I want to. Don't be psychoanalyzing me here.
Well, it's not even just like psychoanalyzing. She's like reading. I think it's kind of invasive. Like her empathic power is somewhat invasive and somewhat, ethically problematic in some ways.
Very, yeah.
But I like that too. I made a note of that one. I will share the feelings I wish to share. Thank you. So, Wesley ends up realizing that he's the cause of the problem, and the nanites he's been studying for advanced genetics got loose. They have gigabytes of mechanical computer memory. I had to laugh. Yeah, so does this thumb drive I have.
I like how he talks about I allowed 2 nanites to. So they're talking about evolution.
Yes.
And the subtext of this is, and mechanical systems could evolve. That's not, a problem. They're going to be subject to random radiation changes like biological, life forms. So the idea of mechanical systems evolving is not at all implausible. In fact, that's how we get algorithms.
Yes.
That run Google and YouTube and everything else. They don't actually have a human programmer deciding every little change. They make random changes in the algorithm and then see what delivers the best results.
They call it machine learning. Yeah.
Machine learning, but it's basically a form of evolution.
Yes.
And so I don't have a problem with the evolution thesis, but you notice it's 2 nanites that got away. And Wesley says, I allowed 2 nanites to interact for a school project. And it's like, as an adult, there's a little bit of a subtext there.
Oh, Wesley, you naughty boy. So Wesley ends up talking to Guinan, and I like at the end of the conversation, Guinan says, as he's leaving, Wes, do you think you're going to get a good grade on your project? And he says, not boastfully or even just matter-of-factly, he says ruefully, I always get an A. Like, it's almost like he's sad at the fact that he's so good at what he does, that he recognizes that it doesn't challenge him enough, and he gets lazy about things, and thus ended up in the situation he's in. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to play that, and I'm going to guess that came from the director more so than from the actor Will Wheaton.
I don't know. He's a good actor today.
Yeah, no. But as young as he was, I'd be surprised if he's the one. But maybe he did. Maybe he came up with that. But kudos to whoever did. It was that. I thought that was a good way to play that. So, and then there's another scene where Stubbs and Wesley are chatting again because Stubbs is Wesley's mentor or something, and they're talking about baseball and how baseball had been. This was our first mention, I think, we're in the 24th century that people don't play baseball like they used to.
Right.
And that becomes a much bigger deal on DS9. and how it was lost to impatience, a society that preferred faster games. And then he talks about replaying games in his mind through statistics, which is something actually people do today. And Stubbs gives this speech about baseball, which is apparently what got Michael Piller a job on the writing staff after this, because Rick Berman, yes, Rick, I knew that was wrong. Rick Berman was apparently a huge baseball fan, and it's this line where it says, "Call your shot, point to a star, one great blast and the crowd rises, a brand new era in astrophysics, postponed 196 years on account of rain." And that little speech is apparently what got Michael Piller a job. So,
well, Michael Piller was very much a baseball fan. Any picture you see with him, he's always got a baseball hat on. For I can't remember what team he supports, but
right.
He very much that's kind of his big thing was baseball, which as a baseball fan I appreciate. So,
so I'm not at all a baseball fan or a sports fan, and so the initial speech kind of just went past me. But what I did like is later on when Stubbs is in his quarters preparing to be attacked by the nanites.
Yes.
He's sitting in a chair, and to prep himself for being attacked by nanites, he's relaxing and playing one of the games in his head, and they bring in, and he's talking a little bit out loud about the plays that he's imagining, and then you hear like the crack of a bat and the crowd noise added in sound design. And so I thought the baseball fantasy in the quarters before being attacked by nanites was actually quite effective, and I liked that.
And it was based on a real game, the third and final game of the 1951 National League tiebreaker between the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants, just before Bobby Thompson hit the shot heard around the world, which is a famous home run, winning the pennant for the Giants. And it was the first baseball game televised nationally. Little trivia for there.
Okay.
But yeah, I agree. I thought that was a very effective sort of getting the sense of him being immersed and what it's like for him to replay the games in his head. You kind of feel like it.
And it helped me as a non-sports fan to make sense on a more emotional level of his earlier speech that kind of left me cold, because I didn't have a frame of reference for playing baseball games in your head in this way, and this helped a bit.
Yep.
On another front in this episode, so apparently very early on, everybody gets ordered to quarters at some point, and maybe they said that maybe they gave that order on screen and I just missed it, but all of a sudden Wesley and Guinan are in 10 forward and it's empty, and they're talking about staying in their quarters and stuff. We have a bunch of debate about what to do about the nanites once they realize they're in the computer core and they're the problem. And I don't like what they do with Stubbs at this point in the episode, because they want him to be the unsympathetic guy. So he has to come across as unsympathetic. But I agree with him. Nanites are toasters, unplug them.
Right.
Just do it. But it's all this, they might have intelligence. Anything might have intelligence. This is a brand new computer system. No other, I know they've got data, but some basic thing that's just starting its evolution is not going to be close to consciousness.
Right.
So
I was surprised that they didn't bring up Data as a counter example, like Data saying, "I'm essentially the same thing. Am I a toaster?" or something along those lines. I would like you. I would disagree with that line, but I was kind of surprised they didn't bring it up at all. So
well, the difference is Data is performing a useful function on the ship, and these things are destroying your computer core.
Right, and putting everybody at risk.
So I also like how when Dr. Beverly is, defending the nanites, Stubbs again points out, well, look, you're a doctor. How many viruses and bacteria have you destroyed in your life? That's what we're talking about here. This is essentially a rogue computer virus.
Yeah. Yes.
You're a doctor. You destroy viruses all the time.
It's a smart virus.
Well, I had to laugh. I had to laugh too, because of course they're talking about how robust the Starfleet computer cores are. There hasn't been a system-wide malfunction in 79 years. You mean like last year with the Yamato blowing up because of the Iconian virus? You mean like a system-wide malfunction like that? Maybe.
Or on the original Enterprise with the
well, that
Duotronic
could be
computer
79 years ago. But
oh, that's right.
I think
that is
that's what they're
79,
referring to. Actually, was that
okay,
episode?
Okay. Yes, but it is a bit of a stretch to say there's been, and on Discovery, but that's a whole other thing.
So Stubbs goes rogue and shoots at the computer core and sterilizes the upper computer core of nanites. And that makes the nanites mad at him, which is the first sign that maybe these things are intelligent. So we get Data trying to figure out a way to communicate with them. And just to give the nanites a human face, Data volunteers to be possessed by them.
That seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah, I agree with Worf in this case,
too.
Where he says if they're in control of a Starfleet officer, they're an even greater threat, especially Data. You know, and so I mean, he's like got superpowers. You don't want a possessed Superman on your ship.
Yes.
Or at least secure him down so he can't, like get up and start attacking.
Right.
Because of course, then they play up where the nanites are so enlightened to, yes, we forgive you for killing half of us.
Yes. Yeah. Stubbs apologizes to the nanites through Data and says, "I am at your mercy." And the nanites they offer to let them live, and they say, "No, the ship has become too confining. We're going to leave." I'm not sure, how they survive outside the. I mean, on a planet's surface.
Oh well, I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to. I mean, they don't need an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere.
No, I mean it's if they have the stuff that they need to live on, the raw material that they
silicon.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, they said something about like whatever the computer cores are made of is it's not silicon, some other thing that they particularly like. So maybe where they drop them off,
the planet is made up of it.
Stubbs apparently is very influential scientist and uses his influence in the Federation to have a planet set aside for the nanites, which is nice. And the nanites conveniently help rebuild the computer core just in time. So that's convenient.
And I kind of keep track of what ending type are we heading for. And very early in this episode, I have slouching towards a mutual understanding ending in my notes.
Right.
Because this is just inevitable, this trope. We've seen it over and over again on Star Trek. We can just overcome our differences by talking to each other and hug it out.
Yes.
And this time they play it even less deftly, because when they're talking to the nanites through the possessed Data, they're explaining we're explorers, and the nanites say we are exploring too. So, aw, shucks, they're just explorers too. So, in honor of this endless repetition of this Star Trek trope, I have written a poem in honor of this episode.
Oh,
okay.
This poem is titled "The 41st Coming," and it is based on the poem "The Second Coming" by William Butler Yeats. And so here's how it goes. Things fall apart. The computer core cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the ship. And what rough plot, its time come round once again, slouches towards Geneva to be aired again.
Look up the original, folks, to see how clever that is. That's good.
That's good.
It slouches towards Geneva. Oh, yes. So, yeah, we end with happy, everybody holds hands. The experiment goes off just perfectly.
Kumbaya as with the computer core playing the music. And
now, I have to say, of all the parts of this episode, the part that I like the best is this. It's not conflict, but this whatever's going on between Wesley and his mom, and this relationship that they're having to negotiate. Because Wesley, they've created this character who is the super genius prodigy, who is a acting Starfleet officer, but who's also a kid, and his mom. And that's going to be hard for both of them. And I like the idea of them trying to negotiate this situation they're in, especially given that she's been gone for a year. So I did like that. At the end, Beverly does go to Guinan to talk about Wesley and her worries, and Guinan advises her that a mother shapes her child sometimes just by listening, which is true, actually. Sometimes we spend a lot of time, we get used to talking at our little kids and having them listen, and then as they become teenagers, we might have forgotten that now they're old enough to listen to.
They suddenly develop hearing problems as they get into their older age.
Yeah.
Well, also they want to be heard. They're no longer little kids to be ordered about. Now they have a voice in that thing. But
I think we all remember that growing up. But of course, you know, at the end, you know, she's all worried about Wesley having friends and dating and all this stuff. And of course, he walks in with a cute girl, and there's a bunch of friends there that they're talking to, and it's like,
well, she's initially pleased by this to see that he's got friends and a cute girl. But
until then, she's like, "Now, who is this woman?
Who is this girl?"
I like that line. Guy, what
yeah.
do you know about this girl?
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
very, very real. Let me tell you. Like, oh, it's great. She has a friend. He has a friend. Who is she? Apparently, there were some deleted scenes where Wesley interacts with some of the other young people on the ship, and with this girl among them. And it becomes clear that he's not doing normal young person things, which validates Beverly's concern. They ended up cutting that, perhaps for time, but that was
so they could spend more time on all the other slowness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that about does it. Any other notes on this episode that you guys want to mention, Father Cory?
No, although we're jumping to the third season to get away from bad episodes of the first season and jump right into a bad episode of the third season.
Yeah, it wasn't it's better than some first season episodes.
It gets better.
It gets
better. It gets a lot better.
It's a lot better than some episodes the first season.
Yes. Jimmy, did you have any further notes?
Nope.
I just had one thing I wanted to mention. There's a conversation between Troy and Stubbs at one point where she does point out he has this practiced nonchalance that he does, this polished self-portrait that she says is stretched so tight that if it fails, he'll snap. And he says, and he retorts, sometimes underneath a man's self-portrait, there's nothing at all. And
that doesn't sound exactly self-flattering.
Or healthy.
I was gonna say that sounds like he's agreeing with, yes, you're exactly right, that if this self-portrait snaps, I'm done.
It becomes clear that Stubbs is a very damaged man who needs some help.
who also seems to be hitting on Troy in that scene, because he's telling her, like, when after this is all over, I'll take you to the moons of Meepsor and we'll drink champagne and laugh about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's a deflection. He's trying to deflect her, and she's not at all. She does not buying it.
Oh, sure, but it also sounds to me like he's hitting on her.
Oh, that's really what I saw too. It's like
it does. Yeah. It did seem a little weird. All right, let's. I think we would wrap things up there. We want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek, including James B, DW, Rebecca L, Helen G, and David H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. Now's a great time to become a StarQuest patron, thanks to a generous gift from a StarQuest supporter. When you start a new Patreon monthly pledge at sqpn.com/give, the first 3 months will be matched by an equal amount from our donor. So if you've been thinking of becoming a StarQuest patron, now's the time. Visit sqpn.com/give today. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. And so that's it from us. What did you think of this episode, this Next Generation episode called Evolution? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, or our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. Next time, we'll be discussing the Deep Space Nine episodes The Way of the Warrior, Parts 1 and 2. Until then, Father Cory Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest.